So the work in front of you is a relief carving of a winged genius. Carvings such as this would have been found adorning the walls of the Assyrian king Ashurnasirpal II's palace. They would have been on the wall. They would have been panels on the walls, and there would have been many of them, as I said earlier. This particular panel is currently found in the Walters Museum, Art Museum in Baltimore, and this palace itself was made more than a century before the height of Assyrian power. So the Assyrians were not yet a great power, but they were on their way to becoming one.
And as we've already said, this was made during the reign of Ashurnasirpal II, which lasted from 883 to 859 BCE. And Ashurnasirpal II was an early Assyrian king, and he was credited for unifying the vast lands that his father had conquered before him. This work in particular is called the Winged Genius, and a genius is a benevolent deity that's also a protective deity. And to the Assyrians, spiritual threats were a very serious matter. So reliefs such as this function as a protective ward against the spirits and were placed in the palace to protect the king from spirits. And
we know that it was built during his reign, but we don't know exactly when. But by knowing it's built during his reign, we're able to narrow down exactly when it was found. The stone itself, though, is alabaster. And as you can see, it's a kind of a reddish stone. There isn't really much color to it. But it's important to realize that the Assyrians painted these with many, many bright colors. It wasn't supposed to look like this. This is all that is left. The colors have worn away over time. And the Assyrian palaces were filled with colored reliefs like this. They were all over the place. And the fact that it's a low relief, although it makes it difficult to see now, would not have been a problem back then because they were colored.
And as you can see, the genius has very defined musculature, which is a little difficult sometimes to see with the low relief carving, but you are able to make it out. The muscles are exaggerated in a very abstract way. They're definitely emphasized to be larger and out of proportion. Other body parts are also made larger, like the hands and calves, and this emphasis on muscles and largeness shows the power of the deity. And the purpose was to spiritually protect the king, so it was really important that the genius would be more powerful.
And like the muscles, the hair is also trying to tell us a message. It's patterned into curls, and you realize that how it looks is geometric. This is not how hair really looks. It's similar to how in other Assyrian depictions of the Alama Su, but you understand by looking at it that they are talking about hair, and it's really orderly. And this tells us a lot of the Assyrian kings. To them, there was a huge amount of importance upon their hair being well groomed and their beards being very well groomed. And it just showed in like the Middle Eastern climate they had the power to keep them this way.
And when you look further down on the relief, you can see that there's a script that goes across the bottom of the figure. And it's in a type of writing called cuneiform, which was used frequently during the Assyrian time period. And the writing here boasts of the many military campaigns and victories of Ashurnasirpal. And the cuneiform is written directly on top of the genius. This shows that the king had supremacy over everything that he ruled. And this would have been in the palace, so those passing through the palace would have been able to read this cuneiform and about the victories and conquerings of their king, and know that he was powerful and that he was not someone whose authority was to be questioned.
And like the cuneiform, the pose of genius itself shows a lot of significance. Many art historians believe that on other panels of the winged genius that are in the same pose as this one, that the winged genius are performing fertility rites associated with date palms. And date palms were very sacred to the Assyrians. And these fertility rites are believed to help, provide more food, or asked to provide more food, water, wood, and shelter, which is very important in a culture such as this. These are very precious commodities. The genius is also wearing a horned helmet. And in many Eastern cultures, horned helmets symbolize divinity, such as in the Stele of Sin. And the genius's helmet itself, it's his link to divinity. And through that divinity, it's a sort of spirituality. It gives him it legitimizes his basis for protecting the king.
And if you were to look at the other clothing on the genius, you can see that he is dressed like a king or an important courier. And the genius's clothing is also very, very intricate. And it's so intricate that they actually had to use 2 registers carved for it. And these registers display a hunting scene and a scene showing the Assyrians fighting in a type of war with chariots.
So the first register that's detailed on the clothing it shows the Assyrians attacking from a chariot. It's a battle scene. To the Assyrians, battle was huge to them. It's a huge part of their culture. And archers are visible in the scene. One of the archers, in fact, is on a chariot. And you can make out the forms of a horse leading the chariot, and it looks as though he's trampling a person. And it kind of demonstrates the power, and this is how they fought. And the image is very lightly drawn. It's hard for us to see it right now, but again, it's super important to remember. These would have been painted with vivid and bright colors, and to the Assyrians, it wouldn't be difficult at all to see what was going on.
And when you look at the second register, you can see what appears to be a group of Assyrians hunting a lion. Lions were considered to be very regal animals and held in high esteem by the Assyrians. And the king himself would have an annual lion hunt, and you could see that in a different relief called Ashurbanipal, hunting lions. And only kings were able to kill the lions because of their importance. Some historians speculate that the kings believed that by killing lions, they would be able to absorb their traits of power and strength. And from this, one can infer that the Assyrians killing the lions in this carving were either nobles or royals.
And in conclusion, all these elements show that the Assyrian king was very powerful and a very wealthy man. All these demonstrate his grandeur and his strength. And walking through his palace with panels of these lined up along the walls, everywhere to be seen, one can see that they prove that no one could really question his authority. You get the feeling of his strength, and that is the message he's trying to send.